Hi everyone. Today I'm just presenting some findings of our research into the evolution of a trench fill sequence from the northern Hikurangi Margin over the past 40,000 years. And this is kind of a foundational thing to my PhD. And just as some background, the Hikurangi Margin is a subduction system formed by the subduction of the oceanic Pacific plate beneath the continental Australian plate, and it is host to a thick terrigenous trench wedge basin known as the Hikurangi Trough. Sediment delivery to the trough is primarily driven by turbidity currents and other downslope gravity flows, with those trench sequences reaching as thick as 6 kilometers towards the south. Additionally, it also hosts the 1,500 kilometer long Hikurangi Channel that facilitates the flows of currents across vast distances. That channel is fed itself by a number of shelf incising canyon systems, such as the Hikurangi Canyon to the south, or close to the study site, the Māhia Canyon. And this study in particular is looking at Site U1520, which is located on the trough floor at a depth of around 3,500 meters. This area of the trough is kind of distinguished by a number of volcanic seamounts to the east that effectively trap sediment between the continental slope and the flanks. Site U1520 is found just to the west of the Turanganui Knoll. And the IODP has sent 2 expeditions here, the latest of which was in 2018, and they recovered a 500-meter long sediment core from this location. And this is the longest sediment record ever obtained from the Hikurangi Trough, and it provides a really good opportunity to gain insight into how sedimentary processes within this region have varied over time. This study in particular was focused on the upper 110 meters of this core material, which has been previously classified by IODP scientists as lithologic unit 1. And this particular study is kind of focusing on integrating that core material with bathymetric and seismic data to try to get a 3D contextualization of Site U1520 and how it kind of fits into the broader picture. And this upper section of the core covers about 42,000 years. So 110 meters of sediment within about 40,000 years. You can see the age model there that's been covered in a paper that's soon to be published by Adam Woodhouse. So keep an eye out for that. The key takeaways from that really is how the sedimentation rate was dramatically increased throughout the glacial stage of MIS2. Sedimentation rates reaching as high as 10 meters per 1,000 years, and event frequency reaching as high as 70 per 1,000 years. So moving on to the bathymetry, this is a 25-minute resolution DM of the study area, and it nicely reveals some prominent geomorphic features within the area. The most prominent of which are a field of large waveforms that extend in a northeast direction from the mouth of the Māhia Canyon. This field's about 13 kilometers wide, and the waveforms have wavelengths varying between 2.5 to 12.5 kilometers and amplitudes of around 20 to 30 meter. These are interpreted as sediment waves likely formed by turbidity currents exiting the Māhia Canyon. There's also a second set of similar waveforms on the edge of a levee that is built up against the flank of the Turanganui Knoll. So you've effectively got 2 sets of wave fields. And between those 2 sets, there's a depressed stretch of the trough at the northward edge of the Hikurangi Channel. And we've interpreted this as an erosional saddle formed by the overspill of northward flowing currents facilitated by the Hikurangi Channel. And there's also some erosional scours right at the mouth of the Māhia Canyon. And they would also likely be formed by flows exiting the canyon system and going out onto the much shallower, well, it's a steeply sloping canyon and it pours out into a much shallower slope on the trough floor. This is just elevation profiles which show those features a little more nicely. You can see you've got X, C, and Y. And this kind of highlights the asymmetric geometry of those sediment waves. They have a stepped shape going down towards Site U1520. But moving on to the seismic analyses. The IODP scientists aboard Expedition 375 already defined several seismic units. So as part of my work, I was kind of diving deeper into that top section of Seismic Unit 1, which is basically synonymous with Lithologic Unit 1. Seismic Unit 1 at Site U1520 directly overlies what is believed to be a mass transport deposit associated with the Ruatoria debris avalanche, which can be seen quite clearly in some seismic cross sections here. And Seismic Unit 2 has a really chaotic seismic character and representing an MTD, or in theory. Further south, this MTD kind of cuts out, and then Seismic Unit 1 instead overlays what appears to be leve deposits radially extending from a since buried stacks of channels that can be seen in the box labeled D. In addition to that, there's an elongate depression towards the continental slope, which can be seen labeled in E, and that would have been infilled during the early stages of this seismic unit. Across this whole seismic unit, there's really only one distinguishable regional reflection, which is labeled X. It reflects the approximate depth at which core U1520 transitions from MIS3 associated sediments to MIS2, so that could possibly be indicating a change in lithology induced by changes in the sedimentary regime, manifesting in that strong regional reflector. And this is just another view of those features, just looking from the south this time. And you can kind of see the geometry of that depression a little more clearly as well. And you can also see the irregular mounded surface of Seismic Unit 2 forming a kind of interesting base to this unit. Here are a couple of thickness maps, well, an elevation map of the base of Unit 1 and a thickness map of the unit itself. It also shows that elongate depression towards the south quite clearly and how it relates to the extent of Seismic Unit 2. Based on this, I've split Seismic Unit 1 into two distinct subunits of an initial sequence that would have infilled that depression to the south, and then kind of as it kind of topped over the surface of the MTD, it's spilled out and filled in the kind of the entirety of the study region. And within the seismic surveys, there's also some interesting features, such as these large-scale sediment waves, and you can kind of see the internal structures a little more clearly. They have a kind of backset geometry with long, shallow star slopes and steep lee faces, and what might be hydraulic jumps at their bases, which kind of aligns well with previous descriptions of asymmetrical downslope cyclic steps. So it indicates that turbidity currents from the Māhia Canyon likely varied from sub to supercritical as they traveled towards Site U1520.
You have 2 minutes.
Thanks,
Anthony. Yeah.
And other interesting features are some buried small-scale channel systems that are no longer present on the surface of the trough floor. They kind of form these distinct incision V shapes across the seismic survey, and the location of the incisions appear to vary over time, which could be indicative of migration of the channels as this unit was deposited over that 40,000 years. It's not immediately clear why they haven't persisted to the present, but it could be a function of the much lower sediment flux and event frequency during MIS1 and compared to MIS2. These channels align well with some really thick sandy beds within the core, which of up to, well, well over like 7 meters thick or even thicker. They could preserve parts of the core that were aligned with the channels and would represent channelized sediments. So this is kind of a schematic showing the inferred conduits that flow towards Site U1520. The preserved sequence is dominated by siliclastic turbidites that would probably be mostly sourced from the Māhia Canyon and from overspill of the Hikurangi Channel. And here's just another kind of showing some diagrams showing the evolution of the initial sequence, where we would have had that open depression, and that as the emplacement of the SU2 that would have kind of functioned as a dam that blocked flows and just kind of infilled that depression, and it evolved into the flatter trough floor and the evolution of those sediment waves and channel systems before gradually going into our modern setting, which the cyclic steps are still present, but there's no indication of any channelization. And yeah, thanks for listening. That's a brief overview of what we've been up to.
Thank you very much, Anthony. There's fantastic pictures of that deep ocean there. Let's see if there are any questions. I don't see any questions at the moment. People can still put their questions in the question box, and they can be answered later or be dealt with in the discussion after all the talks. I have one question, Anthony. These send waves.
Yep.
You think they evolved from sort of anti-dunes into cyclic steps, or else, or what initiated these steps in the first place, you think?
It's hard to tell. I think it might have just been yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry, it's too late to answer the question.
Well, the size is enormous. I mean,
yeah.
Did I see it right? There are about 3 kilometer wavelength.
Yep.
Yeah, that's unheard of. Well, great to see that was on your SEISMICs. Thank you very much.